nice session on how we can apply Power BI on oil and gas data. So in last session, what I showed you in yesterday's session, I just showed you like some theory and some of the basics of the software itself. Now, in today's session, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into the software. And finally, I am going to show you some of the ready-to-use projects that we have already done that's going to be shared with you if you join the full training. And one of these projects are last file or well log explorer. And of course, I'm going to show you that as well today. So now this is the state of the problem. We have 4 tables in this data set, and the first table is called categories. This table contains the names of the assets, and alongside with that, it contains the type of the well, the field that's basically it's tapping into, the pool, the operator, the type of the well, and the zone, and the flow stations and whatnot. Now let's start very simple and create a dashboard for basic well and field inventory. So usually the field inventory is something that you will do that will allow you to do some basically some statistics of your field. So let me show you how this is usually done. So first of all, I am going to use a very simplistic approach in doing so. So first of all, we're going to target categories. We want to know how many wells active we have, or how many wells vertical we have, how many uh, fields we have, how many pools we have, and so on and so forth. Okay, so these are some of the things that we're looking for. And of course, we can go from there. Okay, so we go and create a new page. So let's call this page uh, asset inventory. So this asset inventory usually serves as the first page that you see once you open Power BI. Let's add a KPI, or let's add a card. So in this card, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use categories in order to show some certain statistics. By the way, it depends on what you're trying to do. The statistics can be really simple and it can be really complicated. It depends on what you're trying to do. So let's say that we want to know how many wells we have. So we will drag and drop the wells on top of this card. So this is going to show me the first well, which is not correct. What I want to do is I want to know how many wells we have. So we will do the count of wells. Now you can see in this table, I have 159 wells, and this is done automatically by Power BI. I did not do anything to get this value. The next thing that you might want to do is you need to know how many fields you have in this data set. So we're going to do the same thing. We're also going to drop a card, and then we're going to drop the fields on top of this card. So we are also going to select count. You will see that you have 3 fields in this data set. Let's copy this and add one more thing to this. Let's say that we want to know how many pools or how many operators we have in this data set. So we also drag and drop that and select the count. We can see we have 21 operators on these things. You can also show more information about these. For example, you need to know how many oil wells and how many gas wells you have. So for that, we're going to use a table. A table in Power BI is very different from a table in Excel. A table in Excel is usually done for calculation, but a table in Power BI, it's a visualization component that you will use to show some statistics. Let me show you. So we are going to click on the table. We are going to add a table and then locate the table nicely. In that table, I'm going to select few values. So the value I want is the names of the wells. Once we do that, you will see there is a full list of all the wells that we have. Okay. This is the way you would view informations. Now, I will drag and drop statuses. This is going to show me how many wells I have of each type, how many oil wells, gas wells, and whatnot. So far, you see only the name of the status. What we can do is we can add the wells next to this, and then we will tell that to count the wells. Once you select to count the wells, now the total of wells is 159, which is same value as above, but now we have a breakdown of the wells that we want to see. We can also format this table by selecting the preset styles. We can also increase the size of the values so it becomes easier to read. And we can make them bold. We can do lots of things with these. For example, we can also change the color, the alternating color. We can have a big title for this. Let's call this well breakdown by stat or by status. We can also make sure that this is 20, or you can even make this even bigger. There we go. Now this is the breakdown of our wells by status. Okay. Now, in this field, we have multiple operators that are tabbing in the same field. So what we want to do is we want to allow the user to be able to select these operators so you know which operators are operating on which wells. Okay, so now basically we have basic information. So what I'm going to do is I am going to add a filter or a slicer, and then on top of this slicer, I am going to add the operators that are available for this. You can see we have 6 operators on this data set. We can select any of these operators. You can see as I am selecting operators, you can see how many operators having how many wells, and you can see it's very interactive. Okay? So you can see different operators have different things. You can see this operator has like the most wells. Now, if you want to break down the count of the wells by operators, because so far we only are seeing like the total number of wells. Maybe we want to see which operator has the most. That's also a possibility. For that, we usually either use a bar chart or we basically use a pie chart. Let me show you how to use a donut chart, which is a version of pie chart. We will make a big, nice chart. And in this, what we're going to do is we're going to use the operator as a legend, and then we're going to use the count of wells to show how much operators have wells in it. There we go. Now you can see a breakdown of the operators and how many wells they have. Okay. This is for operators. Now you can perceive this data from a different angle. What happens if I want to see how many operators own how many oil wells, or how many operators have water injectors? So that's also a possibility. What we can do, we can also add another filter. In that filter, we are going to add the statuses for these wells. I can select water injection, and you can see there's only one operator has a water injection. Maybe I want to see which operator has a planned well to be drilled. I click that, it shows me that. We can see which operator has gas wells. We can click on that. We will see a breakdown of the operators having gas wells and whatnot. So this is like a basic inventory. And by the way, you can do much, much more things than this. Let me show you what are some of the things that you can also do. I will show you each operator how much foot they drilled over the years. So I'm going to show you a breakdown of the activities of the operators based on how much they drilled cumulatively. For this, I am going to use a bar chart. So let's add a bar chart. In this bar chart, what I'm going to do is I am going to have the operators on the X, and on the Y-axis, we're going to have like the total depth. So this will show us like how much these operators have drilled in the past X number of years. Okay, so we can, by the way, we can make some room for this chart to be maximized. So let me make some room because this information needs some room to be viewed. There we go. Now you can see it's a breakdown of how much footage were drilled by each operator. Now this is cumulatively, okay? There is one more thing that you can do. You can add a line chart alongside with the bar. And then on top of this line chart, you can view a different information. Maybe you want to view like the pay zone thickness per operator. Maybe you want to view the average recovery by operator. You can do lots of things. Maybe you want to see how much each operator is producing water, or how much an operator is basically disposing of water. So all of these are possible. Let me show you one thing. I will show you how much how many zones that are tapped by each operator, or how many flow stations each operator owns. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag and drop flow stations on the line, and then you can see the first operator has 80 flow stations. The second operator has a 40 stations, and so on and so forth. Of course, you can also change the shape of the line. You can switch the line from a linear descending line into a step line. So basically, it looks like this. Now you have two axes, one axis for the depth or the cumulative depth drilled by each operator, and then you will have a line of the, let's say, the count of operating facility per operator. Of course, you can also link this with time and do lots of more analysis with this. Now, this is the first part of the field inventory. Let me show you how to show some volume data. Let's click on this. Let's click on the new page. Let's do water management. Let's see how much each operator is contributing to the water production from this field or from these sets of fields. The problem is the information about the operator is in a different table, while the water injection is sitting in a parallel table. So for that, you will use a Power BI relationship, which is already set up for me. So what I can do is I can create a pie chart. In this pie chart, I will say that I'm interested in the number of injected barrels of water, and I want to break this down by the operator. So I want to know how much water is being injected by each operator. So we will do that. We can see all the water is coming from a single operator. Maybe you want to know where does this water is going to. Okay, so let's bring this back again to the operator. We can copy the same chart one more time, but this time, instead of breaking down data by operator, we can break down the data by pool. So we need to know where these waters are being injected. So you can see it's only being injected in one pool. We can also break this down by field. We can also break this down by flow stations and whatnot. So we can do lots of things with this. We can also break this down by zone, where the water is going to, which zone the water is being injected to. So this is going to help you in keeping track of the inventory of the water injection. The next thing that we want to do, this is, since we're working still on the water, so let's add a curve, a line chart. This line chart is going to highlight how much water we're producing over time. Now, if we take a look at the data, if we go to production data and take a look at the data, you will see that the data is, this is a monthly, so this is a daily data. So it's being captured over the time. So you have too many rows. But what happens if you want to calculate the year totals or yearly total of produced water? That's very easy. You'll drag and drop the date, and you will drag and drop the water. Before you drag and drop the column or the water you want to do, you see that in Power BI, the date gets broken down into something called date hierarchy. A date hierarchy, it's building components of the date. A date starting from the top and ending at the bottom, you have the biggest component, which is the year, and then you have the quarter, you have the month, and then you have the days. So if you're only interested in year, you can shut off all of these and just keep the year. So this way you will create a breakdown of your production by year. So we will drag and drop the water on the y-axis. So this is going to give you like how much water you have produced over the years. So you can see at the end we're producing something close to 50 millions. But this is coming from the full field. This is not for a single well. This is for multiple wells at the same time. We can do other things. For example, we can also see the gas production or the total gas production. We can see also the total oil production per year. But now the problem is the water production is so much. Actually, this is getting the other values getting hindered from this. So that's why we can switch to something called a log y-axis. So if you go to y-axis and make sure, by the way, log cannot be 0. Let's make sure that this is compatible with log. We will activate the log, and now all of these curves are basically comparable together. Okay, so this is log y-axis. There is one more thing that you can do. If you're not comfortable seeing the dates, what you can do is you can switch this back to date, and then you're going to see everything that is captured from the field with its corresponding date, like this. If you want a monthly, if you want a yearly breakdown, you will switch back to year, and then let's just keep, let's do this. Let's keep the quarter. Let's see how much production we are getting each quarter. There we go. Now you are going to see the production per quarter. And of course, you can also add a filter for the dates as well, so you can know where the production is coming from to each corresponding date. So this is regarding the water management. You can switch this into an area chart that will look like this. You can create a stacked area chart where the summation of these should be 1. Basically, you can do lots of types of visualizations with this. Now let's plus on a new page. Based on this page, I'm going to show you how we can create a really base X and Y map. So let's create an X and Y map, or it's basically, we can create a bubble map. So we will add a scatter. From this scatter chart, what we want to know the locations of the X and Y. So we will drag and drop the X and Y coordinates. And then this is where our wells are located at. So this chart is missing lots of context. One of the context that this chart is missing is the names of the wells. So to add the names of the wells on top of this, we can color these on any way we want. For example, we can add the well name on the legend. So now each well is colored. Not just that, we can also increase the size of these wells by selecting anything. For example, I want to know the cumulative oil as a size of these wells. So now let's drag and drop the oil to the size. So now you can see each well or each bubble is corresponding, or the size of the bubble is basically corresponding to how much oil is being produced. Vice versa, you can do the same thing for the water. You can see which wells are producing the higher amount of water. This is a really simple base map. You can also create further filters and slicers with this. For example, let's add a slicer. And from this slicer, let's select the zones. You can select any zone you want. So once you select these zones, your map is going to be filtered down. Maybe you want to know the total cumulative calculated oil production based on this map selection. That's very easy. You're going to add a card, and in this card, you're going to drag and drop the oil production on top of it. So this is going to give you the cumulative oil produced based on what you're seeing on the map. If you are interested in only one of these wells, once you select the well, the values will be updated as you do move between these wells, because this is going to be interactive. If you want to select multiple zones, that's also a possibility. You can select multiple zones and see everything together. Let's take a look at another example. One more example that would be is the ability to create a matrix between different variables or creating relationships between different variables. Let's create a scatter chart. Based on the scatter chart, we want to see the overall trend of our data. So let's plot oil and against water. So let's see if there is a certain trend between these two variables. This is what it looks like. Obviously there is no trend, but at least this is what we're thinking. Because the data does not have any context. In order to put the data into context, what we need to do is we need to separate these data based on a certain logic. So let's separate these data by zone. Maybe we will find some pattern there. So let's drag and drop the zone. Here we go. Now we can see the data is getting colored. Let's switch from the zone to the field, or sorry, to the pool. This is for the pool. Let's switch this to the field. Now this is what it looks like for the field. We can also switch this per well. Let me show you. So if you do this per well, you will see that there is somewhat of a relationship between these things. Let me show you. Let me select one of these wells as a filter so you can see basically for yourself what this looks like. So once you start to select these, you will see there is definitely some relationships that can be driven between these things. Now let me show you how we can add a trending chart or a trending line based on this data. We will go and activate the trend line. And there we go. This is what your trend line looks like. Not just that, we can also create a combined trend line based on multiple wells that we're selecting. And if you think that this is going to sabotage your chart, that's not correct. The more wells you add, the more trends you will get, and the easier it is to compare the wells if they are declining or inclining in production. If you are not happy about combining everything together, what you can do is you can deactivate the combine series or activate the combine series. So you can see basically how these things affect the relationship. Some of the things that you can do with Power BI is contour maps. You can generate contour maps in multiple ways. One of the ways that we usually generate contour map is by using Python. Python is integrated in Power BI in a great details. You can create lots of things with Python. You can do machine learning. You can do lots of things by integrating that with Power BI because Microsoft allows you to do that. You can create interactive production charts like this. You can select multiple wells to do comparisons. Then you can zoom on a certain data. You can do an injection dashboard for the injection wells. So you can compare basically the production pressure, the injection pressure against the injection rate. There is one more advanced topic that I want to show you. It's the ability to integrate LAS files into Power BI. Power BI has the capability to be integrated with LAS files through Python. So let's start very simple. This is a single track that basically shows you a single well log curve based on these LAS files. Any LAS file you select, it's going to be evaluated real time. Power BI is going to get and read that LAS file, and then it was going to visualize it on screen. This is just a single track. What happens if you want multiple tracks? There is also that. Now you can select any well you want. Based on the selected well, you will see Power BI getting updated and the log file is also going to be generated for you interactively. There is one more thing that you can do. You can even compare wells together. You can select multiple wells to be compared in terms of anything. For example, in terms of gamma ray, in terms of bulk density, in terms of sonic, neutron phi. You set the rule, you select the data, and then multiple curves or multiple tracks will show up for different wells. Let me show you. I have selected 2 wells. Now you can see each well has its own track. There we go. Now, the more wells you add to this selection, the more cluttered chart you will get and the more comparisons that you can do. For example, maybe I'm only interested in a certain range of depth in my well. I will click on the chart and then I am going to set the limit for my chart. So I will say that I am interested in 200-foot interval. So we will run this again, and this time we are only going to see 200 foot of well log visualization. That's all from my side, and over to you, Nikhil. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Of course, this is not everything on Power BI. We're going to teach way more things in the full training. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time, and over to you, Nikhil.